Joining me now from Phoenix is Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona. Senator Flake, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me on.
Before I get to the question of whether truth is relative, and I'm sure you have a strong opinion about that, I do want to start with North Korea, the overnight developments here, the president indicating summit likely back on. Let me ask you this. While we've had this debate about is it going to happen, is it not going to happen, are you any clearer in understanding what the summit's about? What are we negotiating? What's on the table and what isn't?
Well, a lot of us have been skeptical that North Korea will ever agree to total denuclearization. I think they believe they're in the position they're in, kind of as a nuclear peer with us because of their nuclear weapons. They obviously see the Libya situation as something they don't want to get into. So I think many of us question whether they're going to get there. But let me say, a freeze would be better than we've had before. So there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, they may not denuclearize, but we can have a better situation than we currently have. But I do think that a lot of people are questioning where exactly we are. I hope that along with the summit, and I hope it still happens,
right,
that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on, and that's a real question right now.
So you're okay if the president is negotiating phasing out, if denuclearization is more of a long-term goal, if, for instance, North Korea says, hey, we'd like to have a deal more like Pakistan.
Right.
That's more, is something like that more comfortable? I say more comfortable. Obviously, denuclearization would be the most comfortable. But is that something you could live with?
Well, I think that we're going to have to live with that. I think that the North Koreans realize that total denuclearization on their part is not in their national interest. That's how they see it. I don't think the rest of us see it that way, but that's how they see it. So I do think that a freeze or something short of total denuclearization is certainly better than the situation that we have right now, where we had an escalating situation. North Korea was continuing to test, and that's not good for anyone.
There's been some speculation that China's involvement suddenly in their own talks with Kim Jong-un and the trade talks have all sort of gotten thrown into this. Do you believe this whole controversy over the Chinese telecom company ZTE is part of the on-again, off-again aspect of the summit?
It may well be. We don't know completely. We don't have a window into that. But it sounds as if ZTE is certainly part of a broader conversation. And that's the way the president sees it, and I think that that's okay with the president. Some of us in Congress are questioning that, however. I think that if China did involve themselves in espionage, commercial espionage, which I think they have, then that ought to be punished, and we can't just simply put that aside in order to have China's cooperation on other issues.
So you are against this deal. I know Senator Rubio very strongly is against any deal that gives ZTE any new access to the to American vendors or the United States in any form.
Yes, I'm with Senator Rubio on that.
All right, let me move to the president this week and that idea that truth is relative. You had quite the commencement address to Harvard Law School. Let me actually play an excerpt from it and ask you exactly what you're calling for on the other side. Take a listen.
How did we arrive at such a moment of great peril wherein the President of the United States publicly threatens on Fox and Friends, historians will note, to interfere in the administration of justice, and seems to think that the office confers on him the ability to decide who and what gets investigated and who and what does not? Obviously, ordering investigations is not a legitimate use of presidential power.
Well, do you believe he's abusing his power? And if you do, when does that get to the point where you think Congress needs to do something about it, including potentially look at impeachment?
Well, let me just compliment the Congress in the last couple of days. The president had this diversion tactic, obviously, with so-called Spygate. I don't think any of us were referring to it in that way. But the Congress, Republicans in Congress said no. To have a briefing like the president wanted with just one party was not right. And so it wasn't just some of the Democrats saying that that was not proper. Right. A lot of Republicans were saying that as well. So I saw the kind of pushback that we need to have, but it needs to happen more often. When the president says things that are just totally wrong, it's responsibility of members of Congress, particularly those in the president's party, to stand up and say that is not right. Truth is not relative, and there are no alternative facts here. And I have seen instances where we haven't done that well, and we've got to do it better.
It seems as if, you and I have had a lot of discussions in the last year, it seems as if you've gotten more alarmed while many of your colleagues publicly act less alarmed, particularly your colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle. Is that the way it is behind the scenes too, or is this just is this public posture also the private posture?
I can tell you behind the scenes there is a lot of alarm. There is concern that the president is laying the groundwork to move on Bob Mueller or Rosenstein. And if that were to happen, obviously that would cause a constitutional crisis. There is concern behind the scenes. I've been concerned that we haven't spoken up loudly enough and told the president you simply can't go there. And he's obviously probing the edges as much as he can to see how far Congress will go. And we've got to push back harder than we have.
Why do you think they've been hesitant? Is it frankly your experience watching the Republican response to you?
Sure, this is the president's party, and if you're running in a primary right now and you stand up to the president, or stand up in some cases for empirical truth, then you have trouble in primaries, and that's no doubt. So I do think that as we get through the primary season, perhaps then many of my colleagues will find a voice, but right now it's difficult politically.
Let me ask you one question about some hometown politics. Vice President Pence had some kind words for somebody that wants to replace you in the Senate, former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Here it is.
Great friend of this president, a tireless champion of strong borders and the rule of law, spent a lifetime in law enforcement. Sheriff Joe Arpaio, I'm honored to have you here.
What'd you make of Vice President Pence's kind words for Joe Arpaio?
Well, Vice President Pence is a kind man, and I think that his words reflected that kindness. Having said that, there aren't many people in Arizona who look to Joe Arpaio as a paragon of the rule of law or virtue in this sense. So I think it was unfortunate because we need the rule of law. That's not what we had under Joe Arpaio. Under his time as sheriff of Maricopa County. The voters turned him out by double digits, and I just don't think that it's proper to refer to him in that way.
All right, Senator Jeff Flake, Republican from Arizona. I'm going to leave it there. Senator, one quick thing. Have you ruled out running for president?
It's not in my plans, but I've not ruled anything out. I do hope that somebody runs on the Republican side other than the president, if nothing else, simply to remind Republicans what conservatism is and what Republicans have traditionally stood for.
And if you ran, would you only run as a Republican?
I think so. I mean, I can't imagine doing anything else.
Fair enough. Senator Flake, now I will really leave it there. Senator, thanks very much for coming on and sharing your views. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.